Today's webinar is a special one because you'll be hearing from three different perspectives from different educators on the experience of remote learning for students during the restrictions this year. So it's hopefully going to be really informative for you. Now, we are recording this webinar. Recordings are available within 10 days from the day, so those will go up. It'll go up on our YouTube channel. Because we are recording, we do ask everyone to keep your microphones muted and your cameras off, unless you're invited to talk by one of the presenters. But we do encourage you to use the chat. The chat is available at the top. There's a little kind of speech bubble icon at the top right, usually. That takes you into the chat, and you can use that to ask questions during the webinar. And members of our team, like myself and Kev, will keep an eye on that, as well as the presenters when they're not presenting themselves, and we'll be able to ask questions later. So I'd like to introduce our three speakers briefly. I'm sure they'll tell us more about themselves when they begin. But we've got Vince T, who's a teacher at Lavers Hill K-12 College, which is in the Otway region of Victoria. Vince has been working with staff members at his school to adopt a sort of innovative approach for remote learning. And next, sorry, I'm letting people in at the same time here. Next, you'll be hearing from Nick Smith from Fitzroy Primary School. And Nick will be sharing about some of the successes and challenges that have come from working with the students and families in the inner north of Melbourne during this period. And then finally, we'll be hearing from Jeremy Brett. And Jeremy supports mainstream schools that have students with a hearing impairment. So that'll be an interesting perspective as well. And then if we have time at the end, we'll have some questions for discussion. So welcome to all three of you, and thank you for coming on today. I'll hand over to Vince to kick off. Thanks, Vince.
Thank you. Oh, good. Thank you. I'm going to start now, Ben. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Vince. Just joined Lavers Hill College this year. So I'm here to present how we experienced the COVID-19 restrictions and how we adopted the remote learning approach to teaching and learning this year. As I present this webinar, I'm sure a lot of you will experience similar things as what we experienced up in Lavers Hill. So I'm just gonna give you some background about Lavers Hill College. We have two campuses. The main campus is in Lavers Hill in the Otway regions, about an hour away from Colac, and we are the only K-12 education provider in the regions, and we play a critical role because it's in the outer Otway regions. And then we also had another campus called Goals, located in Colac. It provides VCAL training for students in Colac. All right. Now, I thought it's really important to give you some context about some prior challenges in our school, even before COVID-19. Given the locale of Lavers Hill College, we in the regional area, internet has been a big issue actually. The internet, there was no broadband for a while, even so the bandwidth was really limited. And only in the last 18-24 months that the school has spent substantial amount of money to upgrade the ICT infrastructure is ready for 21st century learning. The school has spent approximately $60,000 to install better and stable Wi-Fi connections throughout the school. We also spend money to buy devices for every student. Every student will have a laptop from kindy up to year 12, and then we have some iPad to use as well. So what I'm trying to say is the ICT use in Lavers Hill was relatively new, and you're always on a big agenda in 2019 and 2020 to introduce ICT, given the fact the infrastructure was there. However, as we all know, this year our world changed upside down very quickly. Before we actually have the plan to fully implement the ICT in teaching and learning in Lavers Hill, we were given about 2 days, really, I think, to prepare ourselves for remote learning. So I still remember quite vividly in week 8, Friday, we were told on Tuesday the school would go to lockdown. And then we actually had accelerated the process to implement the ICT. So we quickly evaluated platforms available to a public school. So we look at our Microsoft Office, Google Education, the usual web decks, Android, Moodles, MathSpace, and other platforms to see which one actually we can use the most effectively. At the end, we actually decided with Google Classrooms with Microsoft Teams. As many of you would have experienced, Google Classroom is quite powerful to organize your classwork and to mark assignment, to assess students. Everything is well integrated there. However, the main disadvantage of Google Classroom was lack of chat with individual students. And then we realized that Microsoft Teams offer that solutions because we were actually pretty lucky. We were actually one of the very first school to transitions into the new DET education network. We were one of the very first school to have education.vic.gov.au email address. What it means is all our students and staff detail have been fully transitioned to Microsoft Teams and Google Classroom. So we were lucky in the sense that everything was set up for us to go. So, as I say, we were taught on Friday, and week 9 Monday, literally Monday, we just have to focus on to prep our students for remote learning. So we quickly gather all the students together, and we quickly run through the platform with the students to make sure that they know what to expect. And then on Tuesday, the day before lockdown, I think, and then similar PR was organized for staff as well, because it's a steep learning curve for everybody to use Google Classrooms and Microsoft Teams as well. And the school actually very quickly acquired more Telstra internet dongles. Being in a regional area, the internet and mobile reception has always been a major problem for us, not just for staff, but for students and families in the regions. And right before the Department of Education promised to give school more internet dongles, actually the school leaderships had quickly acquired them and distributed to students that needed them. But we also recognize some students were in the black spot that they just could not get any internet at all. To address that, we actually organized weekly work pack to be organized on Friday for some family and student to pick up on Monday. And then staff dedicated themselves to distribute the work individually to their homes. All right. I'm just going to share some of the examples of how the school delivered some teaching and learning for our students. Like for instance, this screenshot to show live video chat to teach VC chemistry using a stylus, just to go through the mathematical mechanism behind, just to make it more visual for the students. And then here is the primary student. They were actually learning fractions and instructional text. To facilitate the process, the teachers actually organized that into a practical activity where the students can actually do that with their families and members just for fun. So the school provided the video there. The teacher recorded the video, pack it in there. As you can see, there's a pack of yeast to help them to make the experiment to make pizza recipe. And then here is just to show that at the front of the office, we have a box for students and families to drop their completed work contactless. And then here we have a STEM class for 3 to 6, where the teachers did a live lessons on diffusions for the primary students, just to make it more visually for them to understand. And then here we have our pre-service teachers deliver a live lessons for P2 class. And then this is actually happened quite recently. I thought that was really cool. So they were in a PE class. So the teachers actually dancing and in the back on live. So the student have to watch the video and they just try to do the activity and instructor. So as you can see that the kids were having a lot of fun with the teachers. So this was actually at school where vulnerable students came to school. And then we just used some Chrome extension Screencastify just to help us to record some basic videos to distribute for the students to facilitate the teaching and learning. Now, We encountered some quite unique challenges. We quickly realized there was some restriction on DET policy on digital platforms. It's mainly around digital safety and privacy issues. One of the biggest things we found was the DET had restricted the usage of one-to-one video chat. So it means that the teachers cannot contact the student one-to-one. So we had to find some way to deal with that. Obviously, it's not something new. VCE and lower primary students, there was some difficulty in adjusting to remote learning to start with. Obviously, being regional area, the internet and electricity access has always been a bit of issues for us and for our community. Again, this is everybody could resonate. There's ongoing challenges, with student engagement and assessment. All right. The first remote learning and the remote learning now, we actually use surveys in Google Form and use a pivot to just to gain a bit of interest from our community. I have to say we are quite proud to be saying that the response has been overwhelmingly positive. In saying that, we still identify some needs to improve our remote learning. We actually identified the needs for better support in well-being. So to address that, we actually have a dedicated wellbeing phone line. We improved the protocol to monitor students with needs, with more interventions. And then we also ask those students to come into school where possible, just to make sure they are well supported. And then we obviously constantly evaluate the quality of teaching and learning material to see, oh, this one did not work. This one works, so what do we need to change to improve? And stuff like that. Now, so COVID-19 paradigm shift. I have this conversation with Tony, our principal, that is actually the experience has been overwhelmingly positive for our community. It's actually transformed our ICT approach to teaching and learning altogether. So it means that now we are in the remote learning 2.0. Actually, it's quite seamless, I have to say. As a result of that, the staff and students are more familiar with digital meetings. Now we're even doing professional learnings digitally, where, last year this time, nobody thought that was possible at all. It was very good. Actually, it increased the collaboration between the two campuses. And then obviously, the students and staff actually learns a lot of tech skills that are more ready for the 21st century. That is really, really good. As a result of that, the Gold Campus, our campus in Colex, has actually introduced a new flexible schooling arrangement where the student will come in 2 days at school and then 3 days working at home, and vice versa, depending on the individual student arrangement there. So all in all, digital learning will be here forever in Levers Hill, and blended learning is definitely here to stay, despite the COVID-19 restrictions to be eased next week, hopefully. All right, so that's my presentations. Thank you very much. Now I'll hand it back to Nathan.
Yeah, thank you, Vince. That was great. I'll hand over to Nick next. Thanks, Nick.
No worries. You've got that. Great. Hi, I'm Nick. I'm from Fitzroy Primary School. I'm giving the inner urban lens on remote learning and the changing landscape. So as Vince alluded to, thank you, Vince, it was a great presentation. We're in sort of COVID lockdown prototype 2. So we had one go at it, and the second go, we changed a lot of the things we did. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Now, before you get a bit worried about some of my presentation, because Fitzroy is an inner city school, some of the fantastic graffiti around the area I've put onto my presentation just to emphasize a point. Oh, sorry. Here's our context. Fitzroy Primary School is located on the fringe of the CBD. It attracts families from the local areas surrounding northern suburbs. And our school is culturally, linguistically, and socio-economically diverse. We have approximately 27 different languages spoken at home. And a large number of these families are digital immigrants or have no idea about technology other than their phones. We have recently become a bilingual school, French being that language. So what does remote learning look like? Well, according to Macatron, it's a mind in Malay. It's all those things the kids are trying to fit into their head that they can't quite fit in. And so this is what I thought the kids might be thinking and what they might look like before this all started. but hopefully we can sort it out. So how it went for us. So the first thing, we had to get the students online. For us, it was a logistical nightmare. 140 students, predominantly from the Atherton Gardens estate. And if we remember correctly, those garden estates, Carlton, North Melbourne, Collingwood, Fitzroy, a lot of them were in lockdown, especially the ones in Kensington and Flemington area. But the fear of that, and relatives of those inhabitants also occupied the Atherton Garden estate. So we started with a lot of anxiety to begin with. We took existing IT, so we took iPads and laptops and reserviced them, and we worked through the Compass portal and used WebEx as our teaching platform. And we taught parents, older siblings and students to navigate the learning platforms. We used grants from Rotary and other benefactors who managed to give the school, that managed us to give every single child in the school some sort of device. And we were helped immensely by the community liaison officer who was employed by the new principal. And I'll get to that in a minute. So the fear of COVID, there's the fear of COVID looking straight at you. I'll get off that one, it's a bit scary. Potential influences on the success of our remote learning. So what we found in phase 2. So in phase 2, what we did do is we gave everyone hard copies of their work and resources. So being the maths, the numeracy learning specialist, we made little kits with dice and cards. So we gave lots of people hard copies of things. And then we ensured that students attended. So we actually timetabled daily lessons. So we do numeracy, literacy, and specialist programs as well. And we balanced synchronous and asynchronous learning to allow time for individual learners. So there'll be small groups of kids. And we were judicious with that because parents would ask if their kids could have certain privileges, and that wasn't necessarily what we're offering. We're offering those small groups of children that need the one-on-one. We made the online learning interactive, so we researched resources and we used things like Scootle and Padlet and other resources, Fuse and other resources. And we gave student agency. So a lot of the students in the school were actually a lot more competent at using ICT than their parents, and they also enjoyed showing their aptitude. And we did that by giving students platforms and writing platforms and showing maths ideas and things like that. And then we discovered also the teaching fraternity who would meet during the week, that broader strokes for more specific learning outcomes were a better way to go. So what I mean by that is, rather than working on things like in literacy, inference, we were working on broader areas. So it could include all of the kids. So on those morning platforms, you'd have 20 kids. And whereas in a classroom, you would walk around and work with groups of children, you couldn't do that so much. So we had much more broader learning outcomes. And communication, we gave families more than a single recourse to contact the school. So they could come down physically, they could contact the community liaison officer, they could contact teachers, or there was people working, agencies working together to assist the families. So the difficulties that we came across, technology, the capacity of that technology. We also found culturally that a lot of the families found technology a bit invasive. So they didn't like the idea of cameras being on in their houses. And we had to make sure that we would make a safe room or a place where children would be learning, a room in the house where they didn't feel like that we were intruding. So that goes with the cultural aspect of things. Language. So a lot of our families didn't speak English. So we worked with different agencies, family agencies, different cultural agencies, working with different families, working with the middle generation as well. So lots of our children have brothers and sisters at high school. So they became the conduit of learning between them and the families. And they also helped the parents navigate that we weren't trying to come into their homes for any other reason than learning. The curriculum. So like I said before, we started to adapt the curriculum. So it was a lot more working in line with technology. Well-being, that was probably the biggest thing that we've faced at Fitzroy. Anxiety, fear, how COVID is spread, where it comes from, things like that. Family dynamics, so custody and parenting, and resources, so having the equipment. So we quickly, that's why we packed with the hard copies, we packed lots of resources. And we've done maths with packets of pasta and things like that as well. So we were still precariously hanging on the edge of being a successful online learning regime, but we were making it. We were starting to make it. Kids were turning up, kids were applying themselves. The Compass Learning Portal allowed those students to submit work, and things were working pretty well. Like I said earlier, the community liaison officer was fantastic. At Fitzroy, we have a broad range of students. the majority of which come from the Horn of Africa. And we'd never employed a liaison officer from that part of the world, and we did this time, and they've been invaluable. They've come in and they've worked with different families, and they've also managed to allay families' fear about why we're coming into the house and why kids have to be online and so forth. So they've been fantastic, and I cannot speak more highly of them. So collaboration, I think Vince mentioned this as well. So I just took this quote because I thought this was a really good thing to sort of outline how important collaboration is in times like this. To ensure all relationships are positive and productive. Teachers collaborating with one another, team teaching, leadership collaborating with external and internal non-teaching bodies, teachers, families and students. The broader community to be engaged and a sustainable program to be put into place for the benefit of all stakeholders. And at the moment, I think we've got that, but I will come to something that's been resonating with our school in particular. So other ways that we did this, I managed to work out how to create a YouTube channel, which is not that hard to do. And the kids really liked the fact that Nick was teaching maths on YouTube. So I've now done about 50 episodes, and it's very popular with them to actually get the idea of the maths. I don't think it's popular in terms of a form of entertainment, but the fact that the teacher could be accessed through YouTube was a really a winner for them, and they really liked that. And other teachers have done small YouTube channels as well. So the wolf is still at the door, and the main tenets of which I believe that our school has worked successfully have been compassion, humanity, and empathy. We're trying to develop the whole child. In fact, I would say, and I think a lot of you probably would agree, it's the children that come online with their smiles and the happiness and the ready to work thing that keep you going during the day. They've been amazing. Look after and make sure you're familiar with the different scenarios at play. Mentor and assist one another. So as teachers and also as human beings, ask for help both professionally and personally. Listen to the learner. So I have fantastic conversations with students. We're having a cultural day next Wednesday, which is going to be interesting because that's the first time that 140 students have been online in the one place, but we're going to give it a go. Build positive and viable links. Smile, stay happy and healthy so you can be at your best for those who need it. And these were some of the resources that we've used. There's a million resources out there. So, but these are some of the things that the kids have sort of said that worked really well, and which have worked really well as in terms of our teaching plans as well. Thank you for listening. My version was a bit shorter, but that's how we coped with the COVID scenario at Fitzroy Primary School Mark II.
Nick, a bit of interest in the your graphics. Do you want to tell the audience a bit about them? They were fantastic.
I did. The kids, of course, Fitzroy is a inner suburban suburb, and we have lots of graffiti artists who come down, and I did a paper for my master's at Melbourne Uni about the importance of graffiti in a society, which kind of sounds kind of, I don't know, at odds. But Fitzroy was identified as a place where taggers or graphers or graffiti artists come and put up their work. And if you manage to put up some great work, then you're noticed, and it's on a global scale. So those artists, those pieces of graffiti were Macatron and Ghost Patrol and Roan, and they're all well-known graffiti artists. And a lot of the times I think they actually capture the essence of particular feelings or emotions. And we've got a piece of Ghost Patrol on the side of the school. So, and being an old art teacher from time gone by, I thought I'd throw a bit of art in there. It's kind of interesting rather than listening to me or rabbit on.
Well, thanks so much, Nick. Yeah. So just while Nick's stopping his presentation, we'll
there we go.
No worries. We'll get ready for Jeremy and give Jeremy a moment to start up his. All right. Thank you, Jeremy.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Nathan.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you can see my screen and you can hear me. So I work for the Visiting Teacher Service, Northwest region. And there's about 20 or so of us that work across 4 different streams. So that's supporting schools that have students with a hearing impairment or vision impairments, physical health issues, or ASD, autism. And the key role of our job is to build capacity of the school leaders and teachers so that students with a disability have full access and inclusion to the curriculum. Now I've got a link down there, so some of you might not be aware of the visiting teacher service, so that link will take you to a DET site that explains more about our role. Okay, so obviously we're using Google Meet, and this platform has the highest auto captioning accuracy. Microsoft Teams is also quite good. So at the start of remote learning, we looked at the different VC platforms and tried them out, and we came up with this document which outlines all of the accessibility features of the different platforms. Obviously, as a teacher of the deaf, we're very interested in the auto captioning, so we had a preference that schools used Microsoft Teams or Google Meets. Obviously, that wasn't our decision, but yeah, so that's a document that took a while to put together. We did lots of webinars, and then we had to contact all our schools to see what they were using and what applications they were using. And then we were able to give some guidance and support around inclusion. Okay, so we also came up with this document, how to make video conferencing accessible. Audio is very important. So students with a hearing loss, they could have a mild hearing loss or severe or profound hearing loss. But when teachers are using video conferencing, it always works better if they've got a headset with a microphone, and that just allows students better hearing access. Speaking clearly at a normal rate, checking that the students are using their assistive technology. So those bits and pieces, which I'll talk about in a sec, they can connect their hearing aids and cochlear implants to their mobile device. Yeah, improving visuals, trying to get teachers to have their face lit, visible, so that it's easy to access lip patterns. And I guess we came up with a list of teaching strategies for teachers to use in the classroom so that it was more accessible and was inclusive of everyone. Okay, so here's the kind of the most common used devices that students with a hearing loss in schools have. So in on-site learning, a teacher would probably wear one of these devices, and it sends the teacher's voice directly to receivers in the hearing aids or cochlear implants. So the issue we had with remote learning was getting that connected at home. So we had to troubleshoot some issues with teachers, give them little one-page pictorial instructions on how to connect and solve any connectivity issues. Because if hearing impaired students use these devices, they just get improved audio quality. So it's just easier for them to listen to. So some teachers were making videos to post on Compass or Class Dojo, and what we wanted to do was to try and make them more accessible for students with a hearing loss. So captioning, you'll hear me mention that word a few times. It's good not just for deaf kids, but it's good for kids that are from a background other than English, or have reading and writing difficulties. So when teachers are making their own video content, they can create auto-generated captions either with Microsoft Stream, or YouTube can also create auto-generated captions. They'll need to be edited. It's never 100% accurate, but if you speak clearly, you won't have so much editing to do. So, like most educators, it was a very steep learning curve at the start. What was good as soon as we had the skill set and knowledge and capacity to make online learning more inclusive, we got invited into classrooms and we were giving some feedback to teachers about things that they could do to improve accessibility and inclusion. And obviously, the second round of restrictions, remote learning at home, was better than the first one due to teachers with their own collaboration and lessons learnt and how they can improve, and it was the same for us as well. I've just got a couple of links here. One is a Fuse education site, which has some ideas, strategies and resources around inclusion. And there's a link there for inclusive meetings as well, and a lot of that information can be applied in the classroom as well. All right, so we had some students that despite having improved audio access and you know, teachers modifying work, we're still having issues accessing the curriculum. So I'm talking mainly about kids that have literacy issues, possibly dyslexia. So we've recommended to teachers and to families to use these following applications. So Read and Write is a free Google Chrome extension, or it's also available as an app on an iPad. And what that does is you can just select text and it will read it out to you. OneNote does the same thing as well, but it's got some more powerful features. So you can select all nouns. So in a paragraph of text, all the nouns will come out green, or and that also has that text to speech feature. So just allows kids to maybe explore reading and themes that are age appropriate, and they're not feeling like they're being left out of learning. Now, both these applications rely on text, so it could be text from a website or text from a document. Some teachers were posting images with text, and those applications can't read that out. So there is an application called Office Lens, which can take a photo of an image with text, and it can be sent out to Immersive Reader, which will then read out the text from the images. So they were 3 very highly recommended applications that help students access the curriculum. This might sound like a simple basic idea, but that Dictate tool that's available on Microsoft products or on the keyboard on an iPad, that really helps kids that have issues with literacy, or it could be kids that have a physical disability and have limited fine motor skills. So using this Dictate tool, students could engage in a writing task and yeah, submit work. So simple idea, but had lots of benefits, that one. There's that word captions again. So captions are good for everyone, as I said before. That little button that I've circled in red, that's the button you press to get captions going. Captions are good for everyone. Captions basically, if you read and if you listen and watch words at the same time, your reading comprehension increases, and that goes the same for adults as well. Okay, I might just talk about some examples of the work that the vision impaired team have done. So the main software they've been dealing with is called JAWS, which is a screen reading software, and that provides speech and braille output for most computer applications. The Vision VTs, they've been looking at different software to integrate with JAWS, and that will allow students to navigate the internet, write a document, read an email, or create presentations. For VC classes, Zoom is their preferred platform, and that's just due to the vision accessibility features that Zoom has. Some of the interesting challenges they had were teaching mathematical braille commands through Zoom sessions. I'm quite curious. I'd like to sit on a session one day and just see how they do that. And they've also been converting file formats for teachers so that JAWS can read those documents, so that those vision impaired kids are included in the learning programs. So the other team we have is a physical disability and health team. And they've been using Dragon, which is speech-to-text software, a program called Maths Talk. So you can solve mathematical problems and equations, and it's speech-directed. So obviously for kids that don't have fine motor skills, these programs are really important. Clicker 8 enables struggling writers to produce finished pieces of work. And a BillyPad is an adaptive, customizable keyboard with text-to-speech functions and word prediction as well. We have an ASD team in the Northwestern region, and I'm not sure if other regions have that team as part of their visiting teacher service, but in the Northwest region, we're lucky we do. So they've been providing suggestions to staff on how to use IT in a different way so that is accessible for a student with ASD. I guess the key points here for students with ASD in remote learning was that the element of choice is really important for engagement. And yeah, some of them have sensory issues, so you need to take into account their sensory profiles. They need regular breaks, and the autism team came up with a document to help teachers and families in creating an engaging, structured, safe learning environment at home. So you're probably aware about the accessibility features on an iPad. So that's found in the device settings. So the most common ones that we've been using in our work would be the VoiceOver, which is text to speech. And for the vision impaired kids, it would be the zoom and magnifier and changing text sizes. You might not be aware that there are inclusion online courses that's run by the Deaf Education Institute. And they run courses in autism, dyslexia, oral language, hearing loss, vision impairment, managing behaviour issues, and other learning difficulties as well. They're 8-week courses, and there's 2 facilitated kind of face-to-face online sessions, and the rest is you just work through a portal of information and answer some questions. I think that comes to the end of my presentation. Oh, there's a link in the bottom of that slide that takes you to a list of inclusive classroom courses. That's me done. Thank you.
I'm off mute now. Thanks, Jeremy. That was great. Just going to jump back to my PowerPoint. There's a couple of comments coming in there. Thank you to those people giving positive comments there. We do have just a little bit of time left for a couple of questions that we might put to you guys. Is everyone seeing my my screen now?
Yep.
So yeah, the first question there, it's if you were to talk about the most significant change in practice, I guess as a way of summarising each of your talks, the most significant change in practice that you will take away from COVID, what would that be? I might just go through in order again, so we might start with Vince and go through.
What I think the most significant pedagogical change in our school is to say there's always more than one way to teach and learn, especially in a regional school. You know, teaching and learning always been a bit more difficult than those in metropolitan area, especially for our students. I think these actually COVID-19 has definitely taught us there's always ways to do things. If we have the will, there is the way to do it. So I think, as I said before, blended learning is here to stay in our school. It is totally transform our digital learning. Yep.
That's great. And Nick, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, look, mine would be less pedagogical and more in terms of the whole person. I think the thing that I would say is listen to everybody's story. And I know that sounds a bit twee, but everybody's got a different story and everyone approaches things different ways. And what is quite interesting, the fact is that how these people have actually engaged, all these different people engaged with technology. So what's become something of an elephant in the room, something which they didn't want to engage with, which a lot of families didn't want to have any go at. They've had a go and they should be commended for that. And I think at the end of every remote learning session, the people coming on should get a big rousing applause.
Yeah, I think as a visiting teacher, working with teachers in about 20 different schools, I think the key lesson would be a flexible, adaptive approach targeted to each student needs. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. And yeah, I think that the second round obviously was so much better, as I mentioned before. But yeah, just a lot of scaffolding, a lot of differentiated tasks. Teachers have been working really hard to engage kids. It's not been easy. And I think the ICT skills has just gone through the roof for most kids and teaching staff as well. So it was, yeah, great to be a part of their learning journey in terms of providing ideas and guidance around inclusion and accessibility for remote learning.
Yeah, thank you. We were fortunate to have a leader from the Victorian Virtual School Victoria in one of our webinars back in term 2, and you know, I remember chatting with that person and them saying that, you know, for new staff that come there, it takes them some time to get used to that sort of, I guess, rhythm of remote learning and the difference between synchronous and asynchronous and all that stuff. But schools kind of had to just plunge into it all at once instead of getting all that time that they would get in that environment. So yeah, really well done on the part of so many teachers. We're at the 4:45 point, so we might sort of end the formal part of this webinar now. But if anyone still has a question that they would like to ask in the chat, we'd love to hear it. So please feel free to do that. And I think Kev's going to also say some thank yous to DLTV.
Just wanted to say thank you to our 3 presenters. I like the way the idea of this webinar, I suppose, was to triangulate 3 different experiences to give a real diversity to what's happening. And Jeremy, I have to admit, I've turned on captions, and I reckon it's been 99.5% accurate for the whole thing, which is amazing. I think
your comprehension has probably increased as well.
Yeah. So, but look, thank you, Vince and Nick and Jeremy and Nathan for hosting. I think it's been really interesting. We, depending how things go, we may look at something again where we look at 3 different viewpoints on something, and we'll have a chat to you about that. But really appreciate it. So.